Good afternoon and welcome to Making It. This is the first episode, our opening episode, and I think we have got a unbelievable guest on the show today. Really excited to sit down and talk with this gentleman. We spoke last week, and he's got some great ideas coming up. He is the man what started Manchester's tech startup ecosystem. So as you can imagine, some of the knowledge he has over the years is amazing. He's now doing more for startups, which is fantastic as well, and that's really relevant to the platform I'm trying to create here. I want to tell you what makes a business successful, how you can go about it, give you the guidance you need. But not only that, kind of get an insight into these businesses and see what it really takes to make it. There's a lot of startups, and Manchester is a hub for it. Particularly the Northwest in a whole is massive. It's going to be really exciting to sit down with him. So without further ado, we'll get on with the show, and I'll introduce you to Manoj Ranaweera. Good afternoon, Manoj. How are you, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you, Will. Looking forward to having a chat with you.
Yeah, really excited. I mean, we spoke last week briefly, had a bit of a chat, went over a few things, and I think today for the podcast it's going to be amazing. I think there's going to be some really good content. Really excited. It's going to be just a knowledge bomb for I think anyone starting a business, and the projects you've got on at the moment are amazing. We'll go into them in some depth now. But first of all, I guess, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been working on, how you've got to where you are today, really.
Okay. I think at the age of 36, I completed my executive MBA. Prior to that, I worked for two large companies. These were global companies with about 10,000 employees.
Okay.
So until that time, I've been one of 10,000. And for some reason, while I'm doing the MBA, I got interested in startups. Mm. So after I finished that, I joined a startup as an investor employee, and I was going to invest £50,000 into build a new department or division for them. But those days, nobody knew what a startup was, and there wasn't much due diligence you could do on a startup. Mm. Unknown to me, they had massive black hole. Any money that went into the company would just sink overnight. So I withheld my cash once I joined, and when I discovered this, that went into voluntary liquidation. It was a great concept. It was around, this is 2004. It's about, if you remember, when a company sent an invoice, it used to be, you had to probably have an accounting system. You translated the data from accounting system onto maybe a spreadsheet, print that out, or a Word document. You print that out, put on an envelope, put in the post, and it goes. And when it's received at the other end, they open it up, check it, and put the data into the computer, and then go through a workflow to get that approved. And then eventually there will be a payment made. Now, what we try to do is to make that seamless. So when the data is sent from one end, it gets to the other end. We were translating that from, let's say, Sage to Zero wasn't there then. Yeah. Let's say Sage to Oracle or whatever that was. So we tried to build that, and when the company failed, I thought I could take this concept forward, and I tried that. I spent the next 2 years burning all the savings I had. Really? And I realized after 2 years that I didn't know anything about actually building a tech company.
Right. So the concept you thought was good. You had a great idea, but you didn't know what to do with it, where to go with it, and kind of push on from there.
Yes, because there was no one around to learn from, and the internet at that time was it was at the beginning. There wasn't much about knowledge out there about how do you build a tech company. The Facebook was just, I think Facebook founded in 2004, probably around that time. So there wasn't any company really that you could learn from. So I sort of started an event to get to know other people who were building tech companies.
Yeah.
And that sort of led to about running over 100 events from 2006 to 2013.
Wow.
So during that period, I was the only one who was actually bringing these so-called tech entrepreneurs together into a room, and also brought some investors from London and even USA. And towards the latter end, I mean, there were other people doing the similar things, but for a very long time, there was no one doing anything like that in Manchester. So I did this not because to do anything good for anyone, but really for me to learn.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
But
the best ideas come about, isn't it? Doing something for yourself and kind of helping the population as you go.
yes,
I guess that's the question. What follows you? The first thing I noticed when I came across yourself was the man who built, Manchester's tech ecosystem for startups. And I think that's about right, isn't it? It's pretty accurate from what you're saying there. It sums up what you kind of created and what you did at the beginning. And the reason I was so keen to get you on first for this show, the very opener, I wanted you from the get go. I knew because I mean it's amazing what you've kind of created, and obviously, you had your failures and your successes on the way, but yeah, it was good. And I think you mentioned then a couple of years down the line, the 2006 2013 period, you came across during the end of that the Northern Tech Awards as well, didn't you? That was something you founded.
yes, so going back to what you were saying about my sort of headline,
Yeah,
the reason I put that there is not just to gloat on that, but really to looking at myself and say I could do many things, but there's nothing going to be as unique at that experience
yeah,
because there wasn't anybody else doing it.
yeah,
So that's unique, and therefore, why can't I talk about what I did?
exactly.
Because nobody else would, right? So what we were doing is we were getting into running about 20 events a year. Now, these were not really professional events because they were messy events, because I'm not a professional event organizer.
Yeah,
But we had a guy called Stuart Townsend, who worked for Sun Microsystems. Now, Sun Microsystems doesn't exist anymore because it got acquired by Oracle. But Sun Microsystems was the first large corporation that backed startups events, help startup ecosystem. So Stuart happened to be actually come from Manchester, and he ran the program for UK and probably a major part of Europe. So I came to know Stuart, or Stuart came to know me, and then Stuart became the guy who brought beer and pizza for events, not just in Manchester, but also London. And that's how this is that time was quite messy, right?
yeah,
And then we were running so many events, people asking, saying, okay, you can't come to all the event, what's the flagship event? So then there's a just bloke called Mike Butcher in London who was running TechCrunch at the time. So he got together a few people, and he was going through a similar, probably thought process. So he created what's called Europass, which is a sort of a European award ceremony to recognize tech talent,
okay.
but in a pub or in a bar. And I thought, I can't
That's
quite do that
interesting.
here. It's not gonna stack up. Let's do it in style. So we created Northern Tech Awards, a black tie event to celebrate and dress your best. And first year we only had 70, so I went very small, got 70 seats, and everybody dressed very well, except one guy wore slippers, but he was still
Really?
dressed very well,
Fair
And it
enough.
was because people said you will not be able to get people to dress
Wow.
well because techies are supposed to be wearing t-shirts and
Yeah.
not bother too much. But we did that, so that became the flagship event. And then eventually, when GP Bullhound, Hugh Campbell moved back to Manchester, he acquired that from us and instantly got the database to work on.
Yeah. Wow. So I think that's pretty impressive myself. I mean, what a way to kind of go from not knowing much about how to create a startup and kind of the whole community and everything like that
Yeah.
to founding one of the biggest awards in the business now. It's pretty impressive. So what kind of, you mentioned you know, you didn't know anyone and you had your first business, what started out, and you kind of blew a lot of savings on that. What point did you realize, right, now you've kind of built that community, that ecosystem,
Yeah.
and you want to start something else? And where did you go with that from there?
So by 2013, I was already tired of running events because the issue was that we have a large community, but still it require work to get people into a room.
Yeah.
And that never really got easy. It had sort of, some points it got really easy, but some point it didn't. And not every event is going to be as good as the previous events, right? So we had one event when Northwest, I don't know whether you remember a long time ago, there used to be a European funds. So Northwest got about, I think about 175 million European money to invest across the Northwest. And there was a digital fund created. And when that went live, we got all and there were like 5 different funds and lots of for different sectors, etc. I managed to get all of those fund managers into a room. So that was probably our biggest event. But
Did you
it
go
wasn't
about that?
huge.
How did you manage to pull that one off? That sounds complicated to say the least.
Uh, but because I was the only guy running events, so it wasn't too hard, right?
You were the man.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't too hard then, but now it's probably going to be a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So we did all these different things, but the point was that the reason that we lasted that long is that it wasn't just me who was trying to learn; it was others trying to learn as well.
Yeah.
So they didn't have anywhere else to go, so we all came together, and that's why it lasted. But today it's a bit harder because there's so much knowledge out there. So I think it's very hard for anyone to build that type of, gain that type of momentum today.
So
Yes.
what kind of advice then would you give for someone, so someone trying to break into the tech world, or the startup industry now? What kind of advice? You know, they've got the concept, they've got the idea, they've got a rough idea of where to go, but what advice would you give, and what is the single best piece of advice that you could probably say, yeah, you've got to take this on board and look into this?
I think if you're trying to build a tech company, I think it depends on the trajectory you want to take. Okay. So some can do a great pitch, even though they might not have substance. They have some way of persuading others to do the things they want the others to do. And then others don't quite have that. So it depends on how fast you want to move. It depends on, again, how much control you want to have. Yeah. So these dictates what type of business you're trying to build. But I'm a little bit old fashioned. So what we're trying to do with our companies at TechSerate is that trying to actually get something first before you go out and trying to raise investment. So could you actually build a product? Now, if it's not deep tech, you could actually build a product on a credit card, 10,000, 15,000, you could build it. And you could build the initial product yourself, because now there are applications that does not require software developer, what's called no coding applications. Bubble, for example, is one. The project I'm actually doing, I can't code. I'm not a software developer, but I'm doing it myself because it doesn't require any coding. Yes. So if that's the case, all you need to do is to learn, get that learning up to that basic level. Now, if you're lucky enough to convince a few other people to join you, especially at the founder level, that's great. But most of the time, the founders don't actually last that long if the culture isn't right, if you don't, the dynamics are not in there. Yeah. So, but if you can get a product built, and then if you keep talking to potential customers during that period, it's not going to be too hard to get some sales. Yeah. So now you got a product, you got some sales. You can now demonstrate to anyone willing to listen that you have something of interest. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to sort of focus on. I think because of the knowledge is out there, there are a lot of people willing to talk to you, give you time. Why not tap into that? Yeah. Instead of trying to create a pitch deck and trying to go out and say, listen, give me 100K or 500K or a million, whatever, to build this thing. Yeah. That's risky, right? And the other thing is that because there's so many good propositions out there. Why would an investor take a risk on you when another proposition is less risky?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So
supply and
you
demand.
mentioned then Texelerate, which is obviously a venture you've been involved in before,
Yeah.
took a little break and kind of I've come back to as such. How does that then? Because obviously these four businesses which kind of all come together. Talk us through that. Talk us through what you're trying to achieve with that, and really the way you're trying to go with that.
Sure. So when we built the ecosystem in Manchester, we started with a brand called Northern Startup 2.0. So what happened with the internet 10, 15 years ago was that you had the .com era where it was, it's the internet 1.0, right? It's the first time that everything started to happen online. So the second generation, which was called the Web 2.0, was around Facebook and Flickr, YouTube is about the social aspects. So that's what happened, right? And then we got to a period where we started the events around a brand called Northern Startup 2.0 because the Web 2.0 was the trendy word. So we call this thing Northern Startup 2.0 because I think there was some activities during the .com era, and I wasn't active at that time. I wasn't even in Manchester at that time.
Right.
So we call it 2.0. But that 2.0 didn't last very long. All these trends sometimes have a time limit. So we then rebranded as Texelerate. So the ecosystem was built by Texelerate, but we ceased operations in 2013 when GP Bulan came and bought that Northern Tech Awards from us. Yeah. And I was tired. So I sort of stopped that. And we resurrected that in 2018. But this time what we're trying, so the last time was bringing everybody together. It's a big talking shop, right? We didn't actually do anything ourselves. Okay. But now there's no need for anyone to do that because there are a lot of events happening. There's a lot of podcasting. Everything's on a share.
In the Northwest is one of the biggest in the country, I'd say, and it's only growing, isn't it? So yeah, there's definitely that foundation for you and startups, isn't there?
Yes. So what we look at saying, okay, there's no point doing what we did before. It's not relevant anymore. But what can we do now? What I still keep seeing is that companies are making the same mistakes I made those days. There's still a lot of people coming into market, not knowing how to build this company. So why don't we actually get involved in that process? Yeah. So what we've done up to now is that we create a founder network where there's a lot of trust in it. And we openly share the challenges we have and we learn from each other. So we are working with 25 companies today. And that's the heart of everything we do. And then around that, we build a growth network where we have partners come on board. Because I'm not a consultant. I'm not trying to be a consultant. Yeah. So we work with partners. We are working with the technology companies to find out how to build their team. So for example, recruitment, how to build that product. So we got about 3 partners to help that. Yeah. How to commercialize that product. So we now got the growth network. And what we are trying to build now is an investor network to go with that. And the last one to build is what we call the exit network. So we are looking at working with founding teams all the way up to their exit. And that's a long period. So we're looking at 7 to 10 years possibly. Okay.
So what would you say, I mean, you've kind of touched on it there, the exit plan. Now, I know you're not shy of saying, you've succeeded, you've failed, and you've exited. I think a recent article on yourself said exactly the same, you're not saying it's all success. Creating a startup isn't instant. Let's go. 2 years, a year, sometimes a lot longer. You're going to succeed. It might not happen. What would you say the difference is? Obviously, you need that concept, that idea. But what would you say the difference is between a company that tends to succeed or a company that tends to fail? Is there a pattern you've noticed over the years with the ones you've worked with?
Not really. I think I think it comes down to people, right? Yeah. And it comes down to how long you can sustain that level of high intensity energy. because
Yeah.
recently I was talking to some of our companies. I thought, I'm trying to go to sleep before midnight and trying to wake a bit later, right? And some, one guy was saying, I'm actually working till 4 o'clock every day now.
Wow.
And I was saying, man, that's crazy. And he's working till 4 o'clock and waking up at 10 o'clock, he's still getting 6 hours.
Yeah.
Well, working till 4 o'clock sounds like a very, very long time, right?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. But his mentality is that I've got to keep pushing. If I take a break, especially given the markets are dry right now,
Yeah.
he might not survive. So he has to work hard. So I think at the end of the day, you need to put extreme amount of energy in to keep these companies going, because all we hear from press and media is that something happened, won an award or win a customer or raise investment. Though that's just a little moment in time, and the rest of the time you have to do boring things. Sometimes it's boring to build products, right? And the products break and you have to maintain, you have to test. Going after customers, you get so many disappointment trying to convince someone to buy your product. So these are really hard things to do. So how can you keep that level of intensity all that time until you get to a moment where overnight you are a success story? And I think that's so it's not necessarily about perseverance. It's more about, do you have the ability in yourself because it's not just about you pushing yourself. You have to motivate everybody around you when the bad times come. And right now we are in a mess, right?
Yeah.
I mean, today is better, but if you think about April, May, nobody knew what's going to happen, and that was really a bad period of time. So you got to.
Sorry, with your connections in the kind of industry, what have you found during that period? Have you found people panicked, people kind of, stuck together? From my perspective and what I've seen, we've been furloughed ourselves throughout the period, and a few of the guys have been working, and they've noticed that, the community, even the recruiting world, which is unheard of, I think, for a long time, has come together. Did you find that with a lot of the companies you were working with, that the support network was there for them to kind of pull together, get through this period, and kind of come out the other side, all kind of keep going?
Yes, very much so. So what happened prior to COVID-19 is that we would typically meet once a month, and now online we meeting twice every week. So we do a workshop on Wednesdays and we do a company presentation on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So suddenly we are very active online. We are supporting each other, but also we realize, the government has been throwing lots of financial aid, and some of the companies have managed to access it, some haven't. It depends on where you fit in with many things, right? Most of the companies lost customer base overnight. Yes. So instead of looking at how do we grow, the survival became the most important thing.
Yeah.
So the guy I mentioned about working till 4 o'clock, he has to work extremely hard because he was in travel industry. So that disappeared overnight. So he has to be ready when the good times come. But what it's also given him is the time to think, time to look ahead. Whereas previously he couldn't, because he has to keep running. Now he's not running, he's working long hours, but he has more time to think.
Yeah.
And it's not just him, but there are many others who are taking the time to look at what does the product do? Can we improve that? Is that going to be suitable for the next 10 years? Let's try to improve our value proposition. Let's try to understand what we couldn't before, because we were all operating at a higher speed and we didn't have time to catch a breath, right?
Yeah.
So we all come together, and now the next challenge for us is saying, some of them are saying, yeah, we've done all online, but let's meet up for a drink.
Yeah.
And we can't do that quite yet. We're getting close to that.
Yeah.
So we have one guy, he's sort of got fed up with being stuck. So he's went to Spain a few days ago, but I don't know whether he can come back.
Oh yeah, he's probably stuck over there for a while now, unfortunately.
Yes. So I think and that's what that's what got me to create what's called Furloughed Life,
Yeah.
because it's very hard to go in front of an investor and try to push a story which is not a growth story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all you can do is to take time, build your value proposition. So I sort of came up with the idea saying, okay, all these people being furloughed and the tiny startup, they need survival is number one priority. But if these furlough staff, can we tap into their skill set? Can we just bring the parties together? And maybe that could help make a difference to a tech startup. So that's how I started with Furloughed Life, and it had a time period. And I'm creating the next one now. So
yeah, so I'm glad you've come to that, actually, because you briefly touched upon it before. You mentioned the financial side of things, but I think the important thing, we discussed last week, was the people.
Yeah.
People in startups, creating that culture, creating that kind of environment, and building upon it is so important. And what Furloughed Life does, and the next project, which I'll let you explain a little bit more about, does is kind of give startups that kind of stability and that help from people, and obviously Furloughed Life was a fantastic initiative, and like you say, it did have its expiry date, but you're moving on with a new project now. So just talk to us about that and how that will kind of benefit the startup industry as well.
Yeah. So I think, there are two things. One is that without people, you can't create businesses. We're not that advanced enough to let a robot create a new business, right? Maybe one day that will happen. So we still need people. The minimum you need is one. So, you get to a point, you have two ways to go about. One is that you bring a lot of bodies on day one, and you try to create a team, try to build something. Or the other one is that you start with 1 or 2, 3 people, and then as you start growing, whatever it might be product development, it might be commercialization, whatever it is, as you start stretching yourself, you start bringing more people.
Yeah.
So it's a talent exercise. So how do you attract the right talent, and can you finance it? But most companies can't finance it because they're at that very early stage. So what can you do? So you go and talk to your mates, and some of them might say, okay, I can give you time, but there's no real commitment. So typically startups are built with few people giving free time, few on some sort of contract freelancing basis, some might be on an employment contract.
Yeah.
So this aspect of that free help sometimes doesn't actually get much attention. It doesn't really get into sometimes your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
But what about digitizing that aspect? So I think Furloughed Life's successor, which is called SkilledUp Life, can do something about that. The other aspect is that how do you build that team, especially if you don't have a profile? Nobody knows about you, right? And it's your first time you're building a tech company.
Yeah.
And it's high risk. And if you don't have a strong network, and if you don't have cash, some savings to get going, you are stuck, right? But could you then tap into this voluntary pool of talent and say, actually, I got this idea. I'm going to push it hard myself, but I need a bit of help. Would you be willing to come on board and help me a little bit? And now we can actually facilitate that. I don't know whether you come across a product called Buffer, which is an American product, which is scheduling tweets, etc.
Yeah.
So that was founded in UK, Birmingham, Sheffield area by a guy called Joel Gascoigne. So Joel used to be part of all tech surveys.
Right, okay.
And he founded the company by himself. For a long time, it was just him. And then another chap called Leo came on board and said, actually, I like what you're doing. Can I just, let's not talk about money or anything. Can I actually put some effort in and see where it goes?
Wow.
And that too coming on board. And Leo came later on, and he came on free. He wasn't talking about money. That allowed that company to become what it is.
And become what it is. Yeah.
So there are lots of stories like that, but how do you speed that process? Where do you go to find people willing to give you time?
Yeah, I had the same conversation. A friend of mine, actually, he's come up with a great idea. He just rang me up and said, Will, I don't know what to do. Like, who do I talk to? Where do I go? And I think that's a key point you make. A lot of people don't know how to start that and how to grow. And you know, and how would they get involved then with Skilled Up Life and yourself, and kind of where would they go to kind of get involved in that?
Yes, so the idea was that furloughed life, we're going to run it until the end of September. And
Okay.
then we're going to explore looking at commercializing that. But I think the furlough scheme has already run its course, and people have been brought back to work, either part-time, full-time, whatever it is. And that was a short-term fix. And that was the idea, you know, because there was a problem, we were trying to fix it short-term.
Yeah.
But that gave me impetus to look at saying, what can we do going forward in a sort of a long, you know, like next 10 years. So the problem now is that there's not enough jobs in the world, 95 jobs. And how do you then land on a job? Especially, let's say that, you know, the education is there. Yes, you take a loan to study for a higher degree.
Yeah.
But who's going to give you a job? There are no guarantees anymore, right? But you know, there's a higher chance of getting a job if you have actually experience. So we're not talking about internship here. Internship is a process that's already established.
Yeah.
What we are saying is that while you're studying, or if you've got free time, could you actually come on board, volunteer, and build your skill? And then when you have those skills, you could go and demand pounds against that skill. But until that time, you should be able to give a little bit of time, and we can bring companies who could tap into that, and the companies get something out, and that's what we're trying to create.
Yeah.
So with Furlough Life, we looked at saying, okay, we're going to tap into the furlough because they were looking for something to do.
Yeah.
But we are now looking at, we can still work with anyone. You know, there's no age limit other than, you know, we don't really want to go below 18 years because I don't know how to all the around that.
Yeah.
But we could go up to all the way to 100 and beyond if people are willing to work. Give some time. I wouldn't say work, give some time. So we start looking at saying, can we actually take a more cluster-based approach, especially with if the work is changing because advanced technology. So AI is a hot topic, machine learning. And then you got cybersecurity is quite, grabbing a lot of headlines. And then for tech companies, unless you find some way to grow, which is typically called growth hacking, because you're trying to shortcut that, it's very hard to grow your team very quickly. So we are initially looking at these three clusters. Could we attract aspiring, what I call data scientists, or somebody who's reskilling to become a cybersecurity analyst, or somebody who want to get into that growth hacking. So we start looking at saying, okay, can we attract people? And we already got few. Now we've gone live with Skilled Up Life. The official day is, we brought it back 2 months to 1st of August.
Nice.
So we now got few companies on board since yesterday. And we've gone back to Furlough Life and brought 1 or 2 people onto it just to try out. So anyone can register. So the way we're going to operate it, make it accessible to anyone. So volunteers, the term volunteer in UK means that they shouldn't be earning any money. There shouldn't be any promise of money, and there shouldn't be any benefit in kind, which is taxable, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm having to learn what that means. So anyone can volunteer. Will, you can volunteer. Anyone can volunteer.
Yeah.
From a 1 hour plus. So let's say you are in recruitment industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's assume that you know nothing about startup, but you are trying to find staff for recruitment for tech companies.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if you have some spare time, and if you are eager to come on board and say, actually, I can give you 1 hour or 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
So you could go on board and say, actually, I can give you a little bit of help in terms of thinking about the team, how to build that team, etc. And in the process, you are sharing your knowledge, and you are also gaining how a tech company works.
That's it. I
and
think
you take that back into your employment.
Yeah.
And isn't that
it's a win-win, isn't it? I think for both. I mean, you're getting, you mentioned, taxable benefits. Well, there's numerous benefits you can get what aren't taxable, like the experience. I mean, we see it a lot now in the recruitment kind of side of things. Unfortunately, some people are, it's candidates are everywhere now. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people have lost their job, and because of that, employers are so specific about what they're hiring, and they want the very best, and they want people with the necessary experience. But it's an old age question. You know, how do you get that experience? And I think this kind of scheme and this plan you've got is amazing in terms of getting that experience, giving something back, and also, you know, getting a knowledge base and getting to know the community you want to work in. If you haven't got any experience in that community and that industry, well, what better way to get it than to volunteer and get straight stuck in, get the experience, and then go and find a job or move careers or however you want to go about it after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are creating this free for anyone to volunteer, and we're charging a small fee from technology company. So we're only going to cater for technology company because otherwise there isn't an alignment to what I do.
Yeah.
So that alignment is very important. So we're charging £25 per month from a technology company, which I think even the tiniest one should be able to afford, because we can make a difference immediately.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do. And, we just have to see how it goes. And the nice thing is that it just couples with what I do on a day-to-day basis within Tech Accelerate. Yes. So we have 25 companies we can bring on board. We need to, now one of the things with companies is that even though they had free time given by others when they were building up, but they haven't really looked at from the branding wise volunteer as that individual's actually been volunteering. So suddenly when you talk to companies saying, would you like some volunteers? They don't know what to do with it. So there's a bit of an education need to happen. And also, even I felt this because we had within SkilledUp Life we had about 10 volunteers, and I was feeling guilty about saying, they're giving time. So I didn't want to put pressure on them. But I think what you had to do is you had to actually have a very good discipline between the two parties, understand what each other wants, what the commitment is, and just go for it. And the money is taken off the table. So money is not a matter. It's what the two parties agree, and both parties should get a benefit. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Yeah. So we, as the operator of SkilledUp Life, had to make sure that both parties understand, and we provide the tools and the guidelines around it in terms of how you get the engagement.
Yeah.
And then I think around us, there could be lots of other companies who could operate. So for example, so let's say we had, 100 folks who want to be data scientists come to us, and we place them into tech companies, and they got some experience, they've done it, but obviously they now want to go and use that skills to gain an income outside our environment. Now, at that point, maybe there's recruitment companies around us who might be able to find them those opportunities. It's possible that technology companies themselves might not necessarily know after a certain period, after they get to a point where, how do they continue to tap into this pool while bringing employees, contractors on board? How do you build a team with employees, contractors, and volunteers, right? So who's going to advise them? We can only give some basic advice. So we need specialists to come along and help them with that. And there is also the legal side. How do you make sure all that works? Everything's this higher level of governance. So we need to bring on lawyers onto this and say, listen, I know when you talk about volunteers, you think about charity, but actually here's another example. Could you provide some advice to these companies? So we could build, if we become successful, we could build a whole ecosystem around us that takes what we are doing to the next level.
Yeah, and like you say, you don't have to be then a developer in the tech industry. It could be myself, recruitment, come over, help out, give some advice, lawyers, anything really what can help a startup become a successful business, really, and provide insight. So yeah, I mean, I think personally that's an incredible scheme to get involved in. And not only that, but you will be benefiting from it as well. You're getting that experience. So, I mean, what's the plan going forward then? Is that, you know, you've launched that August 1st, you said. What's the plan with that in terms of growth? You know, if people want to get in touch, obviously we'll whack some links up below this video for you, and anyone who wants to get involved can. But yeah, what's the plan now?
Yes, so we are live as we speak, and as so I'm very transparent. I'm open. I'm tapping into the crowd, and I've been using the crowd, I don't know, for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So if you look at how I behave, I got a LinkedIn post. I'm updating saying I'm actually working on this bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So if anybody want to engage, they can engage. It's happening in real time, right? So so that got us going a little bit. So we are live today. So anyone can sign up today. Fantastic. And anyone can sign up as a volunteer today. Yeah. And I think I put up some posts because I got some projects or tech startup type projects. So I got 3 entries. I got the old one, unified view, the intelligence part, what you received yesterday, the deal light, and also the SkilledUp Life already. So I put ourselves 3 times, myself. And then Wadara was the first company to join, and they are looking for somebody to, one of the things happening with the company called Wadaro is one of the TechSarray companies, but they were also TechSarray from the previous era, 2006 to 2030. Right. So Robert Wakeling, who runs it, and the Wadaro has been around for, I don't know, 17 years or so, right? So one of the things they're doing now is that they're actually looking at doing a review of cloud infrastructure. So the 3 players are Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. Yeah. So there, a long time there was only Amazon Web Services, but all 3 are now good. But how do you make sense? So he's actually spent a lot of time researching all 3, and he's now looking for somebody who's keen to get knowledge on the cloud side to come on board and work with him to help him a little bit, but the individual will gain a lot of knowledge.
And he's outdated tech. That's new tech. That's something to gain experience in that will only benefit you. So I think you mentioned then he was on it previously, so that shows the benefits to this program for the tech side as well, for the employee side, the employer side. It's not just volunteers from who can come into the business and help. It's them guys who have the business, have that startup. They're obviously seeing massive benefits to be with you for 6 years prior, 7 years prior, and then come back again. That there is that benefit to it, I guess, isn't there?
So I won't name the another one who's signed up, but he's not disclosed himself. We have a ability. You could decide to either display or hide your profile. Nice. Yeah. So another company that within TechSarray who's been running for 20 years, and their 20 years is really exciting because they started as just a little software development company by the founder. And somewhere down the line, they created a product for SMEs, and now they create a product for enterprise. So he's quite keen to sort of give some of his time. Yeah. And I kept telling him that he should list his company because there are areas that I can see need improvement, and he's not focusing on it. So I said, list your company. But he's going and list himself, and he's hidden. And if he's watching, he knows it. But the point is that he wants to give time. So now he's got a thing about, how does he manage that expectation, right? So he's a busy guy, but he's willing to give time because he knows that other people gave him time when to get up to where he is. So so I'm quite excited about that. So that's not about specific area. That's about building a tech company. That's what the knowledge he has. Obviously, he knows other things, right? Yeah. So that could be, typically you would look at that as an advisor or a non-exec director type role. But he is somebody, I think we might be able to attract a lot more people like him onto who's willing to give some time. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot, and what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is a few months down the line, come back on and tell us how things are progressing and hear a bit more about, SkilledUp Life and the people you've got on board, if they'll let you disclose that, and we'll find out a little bit more. But what a way to kind of finish
finished the podcast, the very first one. Really, really excited. I hope everyone who's watching has enjoyed it. Manoj, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your experiences, what you've achieved, and what your plans are going forward. And I do very much look forward to getting you on the show. And I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Will.
Yeah. So there we have it, our very first episode of Making It Completed. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to find out some more information on what we do and want to maybe even come on the show or just get some industry updates, please do connect with me. Follow the Candid Solutions LinkedIn page for great insight, and also our YouTube channel. We do have that, and Spotify. So please, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Take care.